You guys hear me okay over there?
No, I loud and clear.
Gotcha.
I can hear you fine.
I wanna try something here. I was playing around with YouTube or with the Fuse. I want to see if you guys can actually hear the videos now. So let's try something here. Let's try this. Eric, Kurt, please try back later. Wonder.
Evening, Trav.
Evening. I'm wondering if my wonderful support center has locked us out of watching videos here. Huh. All right. Well, maybe next time, guys. I guess that won't work, so. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to wait just a few more seconds. Looks like we're missing just 2 people. And then we'll get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hope everybody had a good week. Today we're going to go over patient needs assessments, some environmental risk and social determinants. And everybody see the little iPad over there on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. All right, so before we get moved forward, though, I guess I should ask, does anybody have any questions, any comments, anything they want to tell me about last week? Or is everybody good to go?
Good to go.
All right. So jumping right into here, if my button will click and let us do anything. There we go. A patient needs assessment is basically the assessment that we actually perform on the patient. It's not just the physical assessment, it's an overall assessment. They kind of have 3 steps involved with that patient assessment, kind of some research, some interview, and then evaluation. When we do research, we kind of need to start at the referral source itself. So when we get the information from the physician's office or we get the information from the ER, doing a little bit of initial dive down into the patient, like what kind of medical conditions do they have? What are their demographics? Do we know if there's any obstacles that exist for this patient? Certain obstacles would be like, is it identified already in the chart through the ER that they have a concern because the patient has fallen 15 times in the last couple days? We also want to look at their discharge instructions and just make sure that we fully understand what we're going to see them for. Nothing's more embarrassing than showing up and they're like, hey, you're here for I don't know. We'll just use the word pneumothorax because most people don't even know what that is except for EMS providers and healthcare providers. But if you didn't know what that was, it'd be pretty embarrassing to walk into the home and be talking to the patient about how they need to manage their pneumothorax when you don't even know what the heck you're talking about. So there are going to be some conditions, some issues out there that obviously we don't remember or we don't recall because we don't deal with it a lot. Uh, and that's important for us to kind of get that pre research done before we go into the home. So that way we fully understand their medical condition and what's going on with them. And then, if you can get some familiarity with their medication list, once again, that's something that there's going to be a list of medications that, even probably out of a list of most people's meds, there's usually 1 or 2 that I don't always recognize because we don't always deal with it a whole lot. And we just don't deal with it in the emergency setting. So making sure you kind of understand those medications and whether or not they're super important to, the healthcare, or is it just like something for their bladder retention or stuff like that. Being able to walk into that appointment with confidence and skill that you know what you're doing is going to make you look a lot more um, confident to the patient, which is going to help build that rapport. If you're in there going, well, I don't know what this is and I don't know what that is, oh, I don't really understand your medical condition, that's really going to not put a lot of faith in that patient in you. And so super important that we kind of do that pre-research before we walk into that residence. All right, the next one is going to be the interview, and this is where you actually go into the home and actually interview the patient. That's where you kind of do that more listening than talking type thing. And so, there's many different ways to interview people for these appointments. Number one is just talking to them directly and saying, hey, how do you feel about your healthcare? If you were to rate your healthcare right now between 0 and 10, how would you feel? And then just ask them, like, hey, how easy is it for you to get to the restroom? How easy is it for you to go shopping at your local convenience store or, grocery store? How do you get around? Do you take a taxi? Do you take Uber? Do you have your family go pick stuff up for you and they drive you around? Um, Definitely kind of take that interview time to also look around the house and just see how things are. Is there a lot of dust all over? Is the carpet sturdy? Is there a lot of pile up of stuff? People that were part of the depression tend to be hoarders, and so they'll have piles and piles of stuff because they don't want to get rid of it in case they need it. If you do have the ability, try to involve any family, friends, or neighbors that are really important to that patient. So when you get there, you may ask them, like, hey, do you have a family member or a neighbor that helps you out with a lot of these things? And you may not be able to bring them in with the initial interview, but maybe you can suggest to the patient that, hey, next time we talk, I'd like to bring in your neighbor that helps you out. Let's kind of help him kind of figure out how we can help you and kind of come up with a better plan for you. Make sure you interview them to figure out how they understand their health condition. So just ask them, like, hey, do you understand what COPD is? Do you understand what CHF is? And how in depth do you understand that? You can definitely ask them their learning style. Is it easier that I show you how to do something, or is it easier I just give you some instructions on how to do things? And a lot of those patients will be able to tell you, like, yeah, I'm more of a hands-on person, right? Or no, I like to listen to audio tapes on stuff. And maybe that's where you can find some education for them that involves audio tapes or books or things that may be able to help them out. And just current social and financial status, making sure you talk to them about, how are you doing financially? Are you able to afford your medications? Are you able to afford um, your food in your residence? Are you able to afford the heat on your house? I had a lady one time that craziest thing I've ever seen, and uh, you know, probably put on herself, but she would only heat her house with the oven. And I sat down with her and I said, "Why do you heat your house up with the oven?" She goes, "Because the government won't pay for my gas; they'll only pay for my electric." I'm like, "Are you serious?" So here she is just burning through hundreds and hundreds of dollars having her oven up at 400 degrees so that it could warm the whole rest of the house up. It seemed just kind of crazy to me. Um, so, simple things like that is how do you afford your electricity or how do you afford your gas? You know, are you able to afford sewer, gas, water, all that stuff? And then evaluation, once again, is kind of just looking at the actual home, looking at the living conditions, identifying risks. That's going to be a good one, especially with falls. We'll get into fall risk and all that here in a little bit, but you'll be able to tell that pretty quickly when you walk into a house. I'm sure you guys already do that now. When you go on a 911 call, you're like, man, this walkway up to this lady's house is always icy. There's no salt on it. There's difference of heights in the cement, and they've got hoses running across the sidewalk as you're running up with your gurney, and those all become risk of falls and things that maybe patients don't think about. And then also just think about their limits. Obviously, everybody has a limit of what they can do. There's some things that you could never change. There's going to be homes that you'd love to just go in and burn down and put them in a better house, but in reality, you kind of just have to deal with the living condition that they're in. But how can we make sure that that living condition is to the max that it can be? So talk about home safety. This is the biggest thing. I'm sure every single one of us have walked into homes that we wish we didn't, and definitely don't ever want to walk in again. We need to do an evaluation of the patient's home and identify potential health threats. That could be anything from, hoarding to, possible lead paint in the home to other issues that people don't think about. Um, in these home assessments, fall risks are going to be a huge one that you guys can make a big impact with. And so we'll probably talk about those quite a bit, but also air quality. Does Does the resident smell like pet dander or pet urine? You know, is there smoking in the home? You know, how clean is the home? Is it, you know, like we said, just a hoarder where there's a path where you go everywhere and you can't really get anywhere else in the home? You know, and then you think about that with hoarders, how many mice are probably in that home? Um, Kim, are you allowed to take pictures of the home and report this back to the doctor? She's asking, or Bill, I'm not sure who asked, but you're not necessarily breaking any rules by taking pictures. And I have done it multiple times before. If you guys remind me, maybe I can put up some pictures of some stuff that we actually took pictures of, because it does open the eyes of the doctors of the environment that they're in. And once again, I don't think you're breaking any HIPAA laws as long as you're not out there taking pictures of the actual patient or their actual address numbers and then posting on Facebook or something like that. So you should be good to take pictures. It's just like if you took a picture of a car wreck and only showed the doctor. Make sure that they have CO and smoke detectors. That's going to be a big thing, especially with like trailers, making sure they have CO detectors. You know, people that have gas lit pilot lights and stuff like that, that definitely would be an importance to make sure you have that CO detector. We talked about lead paint, and hopefully before too long, you know, a couple more years, we'll be away from very many houses still having lead paint. And then heat sources are pretty important too. You got a COPDer that's heating their house with, you know, a wood stove. That may not be the best idea for them because a lot of that smoke will still come back into the home unless they, you know, clean their chimney very well and, you know, they don't actually have that rush of smoke that comes in when they first start that heat, that wood stove. But a lot of those wood stoves produce some sort of smoke into the home, right? The old school electric heaters that are down on the ground, you know, potential fire risks. And then if they're heating their house with an oven or with those portable heaters, it's also something to be very concerned about because those are big fire risks. So this is a tool. This was created by the University of Maryland, and it's simple. It's a checkoff sheet. Obviously, when you guys come up with your home environmental tool, you don't necessarily have to do something just like this, but kind of gives us an idea of what kind of to check and make sure that we're doing it on every single patient. I would say that if your charting program allows you to build worksheets, that you create it within your charting program so that you can keep data of, you know, hey, in our area, we found that, you know, 40% of our homes were positive for lead. And that's something that you can go back to, you know, grant writing stuff and be able to say, hey, we've pulled this data now, help us, you know, solve this issue. So I know that ImageTrend has the ability to create worksheets. We'll kind of go through that, how to create worksheets for you guys when we go through our ImageTrend module. But this would be a good example of how you could create a worksheet within ImageTrend to be able to report back. So with this, you know, like with the home, was it built before 1978? And they just said because it's high risk for lead, right? You know, is there living space in the basement? I'm sure that probably has to do with mold more than anything else. You know, is there an attached garage? Thinking about all that CO from the vehicles if they're running in the garage or anything like that. You know, you can get home radon tests for pretty cheap nowadays. I'm trying to see. Give me a second, I'll look. I think you can actually order it through the Department of Health and Welfare for, you know, minimum amount of money. So if that's something you guys want to check, I know they're pretty cost effective. You might be even able to get, you know, some money from the government to be able to do this. It looks like one radon test is $10.95. You know, and radon has been proven to cause a lot of health issues for people. So definitely something they might want to check. All right, so living space in the basement again. I don't know why it's on here twice on this sheet, but obviously, you know, the high risk of mold, the high risk of, you know, maybe not being able to get out of the house in a case of a fire if the windows aren't correct. So definitely some things that you want to put in there. Combustion, the heat source we kind of talked about, you know, is there proper ventilation for that heat source? Are they taking good care of it? Is there a risk that they could be injuring themselves or starting a fire within the home? Are they using abnormal ways to heat their house, or are they using, this is a common thing I see in my neighborhood and it makes me shake my head, but people cooking their barbecue grills inside their garages, probably not the smartest thing to do. And then as we go down, how are their heaters being, their dryers being powered? Is it by gas? Is there a gas stove? Do we need to consider about putting CO detectors in the house? Are they drinking well water? How well is that maintained, or is it pretty, has it not been tested in years? Is there contaminants in their water? And some of this stuff, like obviously, is going to be case dependent on how much you guys want to do. It's just some ideas of some good evaluations of the home. Do they have a fire extinguisher? Do they have a plan in case the place starts on fire? Do they have emergency numbers? And then talk about rodents again. Do they have a large mice infestation? We had quite a breakout of bed bugs within Payette, and so, we dealt with that a lot and trying to help them people figure out ways that they could get rid of them. And then, like things like termites, are they attacking the home? Are they destroying the home? When it comes to people with COPD and asthma, are they using a lot of air fresheners in the home, candles, incense, any of that stuff that may aggravate their health condition? Make sure that you understand, that you explain it to them that, if you were to use less abrasive type of air fresheners or cleaners, it would probably help with your health condition. And then going further, just going into some of their food, do they have tuna or fish in the home? And that just has to do with mercury, right? Also, are they eating fresh fruits and vegetables? Where are they getting that? Is their refrigerator actually stocked with food, or is it pretty empty? Is the food moldy, disgusting, or does it seem like they're not expired? And then, do they have needle boxes for needles if they're diabetic? And then, is there smoking in the home? Does it smell like cigarette smoke? Doesn't necessarily have to do with community paramedicine, but just thinking about needles in the home and safety for EMS. We went on a potential drug overdose, and while we were there, the officer asked us if he could use one of our sharps containers to remove all the needles from these people's houses. And I think we counted over 300 diabetic needles that had been used to inject heroin. Some of the needles were still full of heroin. They had gotten so high they forgot they even had it in there. So just thinking about needle boxes, if it is somebody that abuses drugs and you're aware of it, it may be in the best interest that they're able to, you never want to encourage drug use, but if they are going to use it, making sure that they don't put other people at risk when they come into their homes. And so, you might volunteer a drug box just until they can help get themselves clean. Any questions about the house assessment right now? Anything anybody wants to add? Things that you've noticed in homes?
I have a question. How do you politely ask people to pick up all their throw rugs that they have all over the floor?
It's a good question. So if you're doing it as a fall risk, I think a lot of it is just talking to them and saying, hey, my job here is to identify these fall risks, and your rug here, even I have a tendency to trip over it. I could trip over it. And if you trip over this rug, this $10 rug that you have, it could result in 6 months in a rehab facility and maybe not even coming back home. Sometimes you just have to be blunt with people and then say, hey, I have a solution. There are some sticky tape things that you can put on the bottom of the rug, right? That'll help stick it to the ground so it doesn't move. Or, is there a rug somewhere else in the house that we can put up here in this area where you won't necessarily trip over it? Sometimes I think you do have to be blunt with them and just say, hey, it's kind of this $10 rug or thousands of dollars worth of healthcare later on in your life. And sometimes they won't comply because it's their favorite rug.
Kind of along the same line, I'm sure we've all been into the house that you walk in and the smell of ammonia makes your eyes hurt, and the litter boxes are full and there's 7 cats running around. How do you just be blunt and say, this is exacerbating your breathing problems, or just what's the best way to go about that?
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that you could talk about is, hey, I noticed you have a lot of cats, and I realized some of them are getting a little older. Where do they normally use the restroom? And just kind of start that way, kind of nonchalantly, and just be like, ma'am, when we walked in, I got a strong smell of ammonia in the house, and is it that some of your older cats are unable to, utilize the area that you've liked the most, and that could be part of the problem of why you're having so many issues with your respiratory problems, is this ammonia really isn't good for you. And just straight up be honest, be like, hey, I know you kind of live in this environment, so after a while we get used to those smells, right? But that's a noxious stimuli that can actually exacerbate your COPD. And then instead of trying to say, well, you need to get rid of all your cats, maybe it's something like, is there a way that we can make, move the litter box outside, or is there a room farther out in the house where, the cats will go in order to kind of prevent that strong urine smell in the areas that you frequent. Is there somebody within, it might be the point where they just don't have anybody else to take. I know an old lady who was just taking old cats because she thought they were, nobody was taking care of them in the neighborhood. So she would start feeding them, and then they come around and she pretty much just takes on the cat. And one of the things I talked to her about is, you've fallen because of this cat. Is it worth you, hurting yourself to the point where you get put into a nursing home to keep this cat around? Or is there maybe some family members, some young kids, somebody that can adopt this cat and take care of it so that, you don't hurt the cat and the cat doesn't hurt you? So it's kind of just taking that roundabout way of pointing out the obvious, right?
Kind of let them help come up with the conclusion as well.
Yeah, if you can get them to make the idea of having family members take it, or the neighbors, that's amazing, because they'll comply 100% because it was their idea. You're right on the dot there. You just have to kind of point out the obvious to them sometimes, but say it in a nice way. And remember, when we were talking about the interviewing, you definitely don't want to like be blamatory, like, you should know better, this cat's going to kill you. And you need to kind of do it in a nice roundabout way, like, hey, I'm really concerned, and these are why my concerns. Is there something you can think of to help bring this to a solution? And in the end, if the cats are what keeps her happy, you may not be able, her or him, you may not be able to attack that. You just move on to the next thing and say, okay, well, if we can't really address the cat issue, can we address the rug issue? Or can we attack the fact that you call 911 every single day? So focus on what they want to focus on, and hopefully over time they'll trust you enough to start giving you more leeway towards the other problems they have.
Okay.
I have a question or a thought, maybe way off base here, but my experience is when you have these difficult patients, like unwilling to comply, unwilling to improve their situation, I get the sense that it's like a social to have us there all the time, to have 911 there all the time, even though they may or may not need us and they have no intentions of improving their situation. We've said we'll have to call health and welfare for an evaluation, and they need to come in and assess this to make sure that no one's at harm here. How do you deal with like the mental health side of it? Maybe we'll discuss this later, of them enjoying that attention.
Yeah, so you really, kind of what you said, you really have to approach that on a special way, because as soon as you say, I'm going to call you into health and welfare, you may have just broken your trust with that patient, right? So you definitely have to do what's right for the patient. There has been times that we've called adult protective services, but I think the first thing is, one, make sure you fully understand what your adult protective services can actually do before you get too involved with using them. Because I can guarantee you things that we think that they should be able to pull people out of the home for, they're not able to. So I think that's something that I would go to your local adult protective services and say, at what incidences would you guys help this person out or help a person out? And that way you're kind of walking into your scenarios knowing a little bit more of, yeah, this is going to definitely be something that we can report, because what you'll find out is you'll report them and then you've kind of broken that trust, and then they won't let you back in, and then they're not willing to change. Now for the frequent 911 callers, that's difficult because, like I said, we had a patient that used to call us all the time. We started doing our chems appointments with her once a week, and our call volumes went down. And as soon as she graduated our program, after about, we kind of aimed for 30 to 60, 90 days, and then they're done. I kept somebody on for almost a year and a half, and about a year, sorry. And we didn't really see any improvement in her care. It was more like we were just there to, like you said, keep her company. And so I think we definitely need to lay out those rules of, hey, our goal is within 30 to 69, 30 to 60 is to hopefully have you visit the ER less. And when you leave, you might show what exactly happened to us is once we stopped seeing her, her call volume went back up. And some of that's really hard to approach, but we're hoping by doing referrals to behavioral health and doing referrals to other people that can be there, whether it be home health or maybe the Meals on Wheels guy showing up every day and giving her food. Hopefully, that's enough of that human interaction to have them stop calling 911. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. I guess I never thought of behavioral health. I mean, the situation or the couple I'm thinking of, like we're talking 2 years, at least 1 year of calling once, 2, 3, 4 times a week before we mention, adult protection services.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised on how much behavioral health will help. And now that telehealth is even happening more, it's kind of nice because I knew we had a patient that loved to go to her behavioral health stuff because she got to talk to a counselor about some of the issues in her life that she's dealt with, but she didn't like to leave the home. And so she would rather sit at home than go talk to that counselor, right? And so we, unfortunately, there was not a lot of telehealth at the time for behavioral health. As COVID happened and telehealth is being pushed even more, I think you guys have more access to that. And so if they are a homebounder, they don't want to leave, you still might have that ability to have them have interactions with each other or with somebody, and that may reduce your call volume by quite a bit. Anything from anybody else before we move on?
I had a lady one time that was calling all the time. She was mostly anxiety issues. And I just decided on my own. I was like, let's go visit her just at the beginning of the day and see if she needs anything or just talk to her. And that ended up cutting her calls like at least by half. But just having somebody to talk to and kind of make sure she was okay, that kind of thing, it seemed to help.
Yeah, and Adam, I mean, take it even one step further. Is there, some sort of medication that she could be placed on to help reduce her anxiety that maybe the doctors don't know if she's super anxious? And if that isn't working, a lot of people, therapy dogs is a huge thing now, right? Having a dog in the home kind of reduces anxiety too. So definitely a balance. You don't want to put a dog in there that's going to cause a trip hazard, but it might be helpful for her anxiety is that the dog knows when she becomes anxious and goes up to her and kind of calms her down. So kind of a balance there. All right, moving on. When you do a home assessment, you need to explain to the patient that you're going to need access to every room in the home. And so if you meet these people before you go out on these appointments, you may say, hey, while I'm at your house, I just need access to all parts of your house, just do a thorough assessment of the house. if they're resistant to it, obviously don't push it real hard. But usually if you're able to kind of tell them that, like, hey, we're just looking for fall risk. We're just looking for, at your shower that you use in your bedroom to make sure that all the grip bars are right. They'll usually clean up what they don't want you to see. And I only had one provider that originally, or one patient that originally wouldn't even let me in his home. He met us at at the other residence that was on the same property. He lived in a trailer and he said, I'm just real embarrassed on how my trailer is. And I said, that's fine. We can meet down at the guest house, knowing that once we build that rapport, he probably will loosen up and let us into his home. And when we were actually allowed to go into his trailer, it wasn't that bad, actually, to be honest. I told him, I said, dude, I've seen a lot worse. This isn't even that bad. So I was pretty impressed with how his trailer was set up. But to him, it wasn't to his level. And so he was embarrassed by it. So you could always offer that as a thing is, hey, we may not come the first time into the whole home, but do you mind if after like a couple of weeks when you have time to clean up some of your stuff or put away whatever you're embarrassed about, that we still do it? And like I said, if they are insistent not to do it, then you don't do it. I mean, it's unfortunate, but we definitely don't want to impede on anything to make them upset and lose that confidence they have in us. And then the good rapport. I just said that, you gotta have a good rapport before you do it. So fall risk assessments. We recommend that you guys do this on anybody that's considered elderly. I know you guys are probably some of you are going to yell at me after I say this, but at Payette, we had a 65 or older, you got a fall risk assessment. Now, obviously that was going to be skewed a little bit by the condition. If it's somebody that you look at and you're like, they're 65 and they're upright and they're jogging every day, you may not necessarily need to do a fall assessment. But we just kind of made that general rule of 65 because the patients we see are normally not athletic people. They're the frail 65-year-old that probably looks like they're 80. And that's just also with that is, as we hit 65, we're at higher risk for hip fractures. Yes, Kim, that will be my dad soon. Hip fractures, other broken bones. And so definitely, changes in vision, cataracts, stuff like that tends to kind of happen around those ages. So kind of why we put that rule in on our side. It was not a solid rule. We did say that, if we saw a 45-year-old that was looking like they were 80 and we were concerned about the ability for them to or that they were a fall risk, that we would do it anyways. We would do that fall risk. Also, if they're disabled or wheelchair bound, you always want to kind of take a look at their fall risk too. So with this, you guys have a plethora, I think that's the right word I want to use right now, a large amount of information that you can pull from the CDC. The CDC has a program called STEADY. There's tons of information on their website about all the things that you can, from algorithms to pamphlets that you can hand out to your patients. And so one of the biggest things that I recommend is not recreating the wheel. If it's already created and they show that it works, then utilize it. And so with the CDC, they have this cool little algorithm for fall risk screening. They say, hey, if you're a patient, scores a 4 on the independent living brochure, which is, I'll have to see where that brochure is on here. Or they have fell in the last year, feels unsteady or worries about falling, then you just follow this algorithm, just like we do with cardiac arrest algorithms or any other algorithms that EMS uses. And so I think with this is a good thing for us to use because we love algorithms. So, if they scored less than 4, then we go down to the low risk and we just educate the patient. We make sure they're taking vitamin D, and make sure we refer them for strength or balance exercises. If they score higher than a 4, then we go down to evaluate the gait test and strength balance. And they have 3 tests that you can do. We'll show you the video, or I'll give you the links to the videos to watch here in just a second. But these tests take maybe 5 minutes, if that, to do. It's something that you can do in the home. They're super easy. And like it says, the time up and go test is a recommended one. And then there's 2 optional ones that you guys can do. And then if they don't do well on these tests, or they do well on these tests, sorry, then they're considered low risk. If they don't, if they have a problem, then you move down to, That's where it was jumping funny. All right. And then you move down to the gait, strength, or balance problems. And if they have greater than 2 falls during this time of doing this, then there are, certain different levels of risks. So kind of a cool tool to kind of follow and kind of help guide you on how to do these falls assessments. The independent living section, this is where they were talking about the total score of 4. So have you fallen in the past year? If they answer yes, that's 2 points. If they say I'm worried about falling, that's another point. I often feel sad or depressed, that's another point. Obviously, because depression leads to more falls. So this is where you could start your assessment, get that total score, and then move on to this risk screening tool. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys 3 links and have you guys watch these and just show how fast it is to do these. And then, whoops, something disappeared. Da, da, da. All right, let's redo this. All right, so everybody should have number 1 in your screen or in your chat box.
The 4-stage balance test assesses static balance, which is
There's number 2. And then I'll get the 3rd one up. And then when you get those all 3 watched, let me know. I want to try one thing. Can you guys all hear me okay?
the time to
Does anybody want to talk to me for a second?
Yeah,
Can hear you.
I can hear you.
Are you guys hearing the videos playing on my side? So like if I play this one, can you hear it? Well, maybe. Present. Let's try this first one, see if it'll play. It won't play. That is so weird. All right, let's try this one first. This is a 4-stage balance test. I want to see if it'll just play and you guys can hear. If you can't hear during this, just let me know.
Okay.
is an important part of postural stability.
Yeah.
To perform the test, you only need a
Yep.
stopwatch.
I can hear it.
Tell your patient that you will show her 4 positions and would like her to try and
Yes, do.
stand in each position for 10 seconds. She can hold her arms out or move her body to keep her balance, but should not move her feet. For each position, describe and demonstrate it, and then stand next to her and hold her arm if needed to help her assume the correct foot position. When your patient is steady, you can let go. Say ready, begin, and begin timing. But you should stand close enough so that you can catch her if she loses her balance. After 10 seconds, say stop and record the time she was able to hold the position. If a patient can hold a position for 10 seconds without moving their feet or needing support, go on to the next position. If not, stop the test at this point. For the first position, the patient should stand with her feet side by side. For the second position, she should place one foot so it is touching the instep of the other foot. For the third position, she should place the heel of one foot in front of the other foot, touching the big toe. For the fourth and last position, have the patient stand on one foot. An older adult who cannot hold the tandem stance or either of the 2 prior stances for at least 10 seconds each is at increased risk of falling. Thank you for taking the time to learn these.
All right, so that one was the 4-stage balance test. Obviously, anybody that you guys are concerned about falling, you're not going to have them stand with 1 foot up. How long did that take? Maybe a minute to do that one test. And it tells you a lot of information about their balance. So next one we're going to do is the time up and go test. This one is the one that they highly recommend that you guys do. It's not the optional, it's the one they recommend that you do. It's super easy. We'll watch the video on that one, and then I will have you guys do the 30-second stand on your own because I can't get it to play over here, but we'll do the time up and go first.
The timed up and go, or TUG, tests functional mobility. To perform the test, you need a chair and a stopwatch, or a wristwatch with a second hand. Have your patient start by sitting on the chair, feet flat on the floor, one foot slightly in front of the other, and hands on the armrests of the chair. Put a line on the floor 10 feet or 3 meters away. Ask your patient to stand up from the chair and walk at her normal pace to the line on the floor when you say go. When she reaches the line, she should turn around, walk back to the chair, and sit down. Be sure to start timing on the signal go, and even if your patient has not started to move, and stop timing at the moment she sits back down in the chair. While she's walking, stand between the chair and the line in case the patient loses her balance and you need to assist. Observe and note the patient's posture, width of the base of support, step height, stride length, arm swing, and path. When the test is complete, record the time. Also record whether the patient used an assistive device, and if so, what type. A community-dwelling older adult who takes more than 12 seconds to complete the tug is at increased risk of falling.
All right, so that one's super easy, super fast. We just took a craft ruler, you know, those ones you can roll up, and put it in our chems bag. And so we'd measure out the distance, mark it with something. It doesn't necessarily have to be tape. Mark it with an object, you know, and say, you know, Betty, you just walk to that object, turn around, and then walk back. And we were able to do this test. I'm going to give you guys, tell me if the link doesn't work for some reason for this one, but we,
The 30-second
there
chair
we go.
stand.
It worked. I'm going to go ahead and we'll do this one now.
Tests functional lower body strength. To administer this test, you'll need a chair with a straight back and a stopwatch. Place the rear legs of the chair against a wall so that it cannot slide backwards. Have your patient sit towards the front of the chair and fold her arms across her chest. Ask her to keep her feet flat on the floor and sit upright. She should try to stand up, keeping her arms folded across her chest without pushing off with her arms. When you say go, she should stand up all the way and then sit back down, doing this as quickly as she can until you say stop. Arms should remain folded across her chest throughout the test. Stand close enough so that you can catch the patient if she loses her balance. If the patient gets tired, she may rest, but let the time keep going. If she cannot stand even once, the test score is 0. Not being able to stand up from a chair without using one's arms to push up indicates a high risk for falls. Record the number of times the patient stood up in 30 seconds. If the patient is over halfway to a standing position at the end of 30 seconds, count it as a stand. Now, based on the age and sex of your patient, find their normal range on this chart. If your patient's score is below the norm for his or her age and gender, it indicates lower body weakness, a risk factor for falling. If the patient can't stand up even once without using her hands, allow her to push off using a hand on the chair. Be sure to document any adaptations. The test score is still 0 for purposes of comparing to normative standards, but this way her personal performance can be evaluated from one assessment to the next. I find this test is very helpful for monitoring the effects of strength training. It's also useful for motivating patients because they can see how much they improve by doing strengthening exercises on a regular basis.
All right. So obviously some tests that we can do inside the home that would take very minimal effort. And one thing that I can say is if you guys are partnered with a primary or primary care doctor, is people don't realize that primary care doctors can actually bill for a falls assessment. And it doesn't necessarily have to be done within the office. It has to be done performed by somebody in which they have given the rights or the privilege to go do that. And so this may be something that you can work with your physician's office and say, hey, you know, during our chems assessment, if we do this falls assessment, you can bill it during your, you know, evaluation of the patient and then give us kind of a cut of the money, right? So there may be some way to get some money out of that if you're working well with a physician's office. Well, the CDC lists a bunch of additional resources, and this is stuff that you can actually print off and give your patients, but obviously they're going to talk about medications that are linked with a high risk of falls. Some of these we all know, like high blood pressure medications will cause you to fall, but also think of those psychoactive medications like anticonvulsants, antidepressants, benzodiazepines, opioids, sedatives, obviously are all things that can cause issues. And then these type of drugs actually cause issues with people's vision. And so it can be anticholinergics. Gosh dang it, I'm having a hard time tonight. Antihistamines, medications affecting your blood pressure or muscle relaxants. So when you do an evaluation of the patient's meds and you are kind of worried about their fall risk, you can say, hey, these are some medications that, maybe you need to talk to your doctor and get readjusted because maybe the dosaging is too high. In addition, they have some fact sheets for people that they can read over. Kind of an eye opener for elderly patients, kind of 1 in 4 people 65 and older fall each year. Every 20 minutes, an older adult dies from a fall. 1 out of 5 falls cause serious injury such as head trauma or fracture. So you can kind of go over these fact sheets with your patients and just kind of help use this as supporting evidence of why it's so important that they don't fall and they do some changes within their home. All right, so any questions about the falls or fall risk assessments? Hearing none, we'll move on. The Fit for Fall courses, these are courses that are actually put on by the Health and Welfare. You can actually become a instructor for these Fit for Fall classes. I think that this would be an awesome opportunity for an EMS agency to do some PR, some personal marketing, especially with some of these people that you see every day. Some of these people you deal with every day. And so what the Fit for Fall courses are is a course that older adults are able to attend. They usually do it once or twice a week. And what it does is it has exercises that an instructor goes with them through to help increase their balance and posture, increase mobility, and increase their strength and their muscles. Depending on where you live, each county has already listed Fit for Fall classes. So I'm going to pop in here for just a second and see if I can find this website for you guys real quick, because this is actually a picture from the website. All right. So here's the actual website on the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare that talks about the Fit for Fall class. And if you want to see if there's a Fit for Fall class in your area, you can click on here and you should be able to bring them up. So if we were in what district was that for Grangeville? What are you guys? North Central District. You would just click on here on North Central District. Do you guys not have one? Oh, there we go. And it should list out all the places within your area that have Fit for Fall classes. So there's a list of all the places. Doesn't look like Grangeville actually has one, so that's a great opportunity for you guys to. Oh yeah, they do right here, Grangeville Christian Church. So there you go. So that's a resource that you can use to send your patients or your clients and say, hey, there's this great place where you can start to learn to strengthen your muscles and all that stuff. Looks like Moscow has a lot of them. Pretty popular place apparently. And then let's see, what was the other area we have? It's the District 1, the Panhandle. Click on here and it'll have a list. Apparently you guys don't have any. Oh, Bonner County, right? There you go. Priest River, Sandpoint, both have some. If you're in Boundary, sorry, Bonners Ferry, and so on and so forth. So utilize this tool, refer people to here. I know the state health and welfare department, we got kind of connected with them, and they put together packets for us that we could hand our patients that had a video on Fit for Fall that they could do in their home. It gave them some of the information on how to find the classes, and then some sample exercises that they could do at home. And so it was a great ability for us to kind of utilize that for our patients, and it was completely free through the health and welfare. They provided it all to us. There's even a workout video on their actual website here through YouTube that you can watch, and it shows you different exercises you could do at home. What I would recommend is trying to move people into going out. I mean, obviously during COVID, it's probably not the best time. So that would be a good opportunity during COVID where they can, you could save a link on their computer where they can access it pretty easy. But we were kind of highly recommending that people go to the in-person classes, just so that they can get out and talk to other people, build friends, hopefully reduce some of that anxiety they have. And so I think it was more of a, there's certain days they'll go because they like Martha and they don't like Betty because Betty's mean and Martha's nice. But, it's definitely an opportunity for some of these elderly to kind of get out and find people that are kind of struggling with the same things they are. So great opportunity. Let me make sure this is going right. What's going on here? Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties, guys. Already did that. Already went through all this. All right, there's that video again in case you ever want to watch it, but we're not going to watch it. All right, it's 53 minutes long. With this, I want to stress that we can only make recommendations for the patients. We can't force them to do something. So if they're adamant they don't want to do anything, obviously don't press the issue. Just, you might bring it up here and there, but I wouldn't definitely push the issue. We cannot make the patient change the environment or their behaviors. It's kind of been known that it takes about 1.5 to 2 months to truly change somebody's behavior. So you kind of have to be after them for that long before they actually truly change anything, or else they just fall back into their old habits. Once again, utilize your motivational interviewing that we talked about in previous classes to help promote change. And then also utilize family, friends, or neighbors to help them, to help push them to do better. When it comes to home modifications, that's going to be the most expensive and hardest thing to do. Depending on the patient's need will depend on what the modification is. If somebody needs a ramp built, obviously that's going to be more expensive than just replacing a handrail, right? So with that, we need to kind of prioritize and focus on the most important issues, and maybe push not the more expensive, maybe the things that are harder to do. We don't want to forget about them completely, but not focus all our time on something that may or may not happen. And most homes, as we know, are not built for the elderly. It's not even built for a gurney to get into. So, some of our biggest frustrations in life. Highly recommend that if you do find a home where somebody has a lot of issues, like they need a ramp built in their system, is reach out to, the Boy Scouts. So maybe that's something that people could do for their final project, is build a ramp for, a gentleman or a lady that is unable to build a ramp on their own. Look at church groups, especially the LDS, are very strong in their community and are willing to help out and invest money in other community members, and then other volunteer programs throughout your communities that might be willing to help you out on a project. So it's just reaching out and finding people that are able to help. All right. Any questions about Falls assessment, the Fit for Fall classes, or modifications to the home in order to help accommodate people? Hearing nothing, we'll move on. All right, environmental risks. There's kind of two types. There are your in-home risk and your outside risks, right? Your in-home risk are like if people smoke, if they use really noxious cleaners in their house, anything that could worsening their health condition. We don't really think about it, but cleaners, especially some of the harsh cleaners, can definitely cause liver damage, kidney damage. And so if they're already at risk for a kidney failure, it's probably a good idea that they're not using a strong chemical in their home. And so you may suggest that they use more of a natural cleaning spray that doesn't have that noxious smell. Obviously, if you mix what is ammonia and bleach, it is deadly. And so make sure your patients aren't doing anything like that. And I think that's where we have the eventually cause death there with the cleaners. So making sure they're not mixing stuff without knowing what they're mixing. Pesticides in the home, like for bug sprays, stuff like that, or, if they use it on their plants inside the home, that can cause some neurological problems, also cause some respiratory issues. Dust inside the home will definitely cause respiratory issues. It increases the risk of mold. It can worsen other chronic diseases. Lead paint leads to neurological problems. And then carbon monoxide. We all know about carbon monoxide. It can cause people to eventually die. It can cause some long-term impairments, loss of consciousness, fatigue, and headache. So how do we reduce these in-home risks? Well, pretty easy. Stop smoking, right? Don't smoke in the home. Go outside if you're going to smoke. Test the house for radon. Offer natural pesticides. Offer natural cleaning products. And, if you can, remove the lead base in the home. And it's probably going to be hard for us to remove that lead base paint, but there might be some grant opportunities or some church groups out there that paint people's homes that might be willing to go in there and help remove that lead base paint. Outside risks, rural areas always have the high risk of
Trying to get people to stop smoking is going to be harder.
Yeah, but like I said, Adam, if you could promote them to go outside as much as possible, that's going to help a lot, right? Because then
Yeah.
their home's not having that noxious smell. Smoking is definitely hard, and I think I told you guys before, we used to do a smoking cessation class where we actually got paid to actually perform that. So if they're interested in it, offer it if it's something you guys want to do.
I just had a guy who burned himself with the nasal cannula hose.
Yeah.
He woke up and lit the cigarette and burned himself. And what he said to me killed me. He said, I guess it's time to give up the oxygen.
Yeah. They say in those courses that cigarettes are one of the hardest drugs to quit. I would say it's probably one of the second hardest drugs to quit. I think methamphetamines is probably worse, but smoking definitely is a hard thing to quit. And so you got to think about some of these people have been doing it for 30, 40 years. It's definitely something that's not only just because it's a physical thing, but it's a social deal. It's just how they've lived, and when they're bored, they grab a cigarette. When they're hanging out with their friends, they smoke. And so it's I think it's going away a little bit more, the social side of it, just because we've restricted in the bars and we restricted it out and about, and we're trying to restrict it as much as possible. But you're still gonna have those people that are addicted to it, and they're gonna be pretty resistant to stop. And so in that case, Adam, it's somebody that burned themselves up with oxygen. Might be just an education thing, like, hey, yeah, why don't you take your oxygen off? Why you go outside and smoke? And then when you get back inside the house, throw your oxygen back on. Not the best plan in the world. We'd rather they just quit, but I don't think you're going to make every single person quit. So coming up with solutions for them that they understand. Because like you said, he was just going to quit the oxygen. Well, do you necessarily have to quit it, or can you just take it off, turn it off, then smoke, and then put it back on? So, so back to outside risks, especially in rural and farmland areas, is pesticides. When you got those planes flying overhead, those crop dusters spraying, just be cognitive that can alleviate or cause more respiratory issues for some of your COPD or asthma patients. So make the patients aware that if they do see a crop duster around their area, just make sure they shut all the windows, stay indoors for the day, don't go out and venture around. And then obviously we all know about organophosphate poisonings and how that happens. People are out in the field right after they spray and they get that on their skin. So not necessarily something in the chems environment that we would run into per se, but definitely something just out there to think about when you're thinking about pesticides. Air pollutants, that causes worsening lung disease, including your smoke, industrial pollution, car exhaust. And so teaching those patients that, hey, if there's a wildland fire next to, the area that we live, stay indoors, try to minimize the amount of time you go outside, maybe replace your home filters with HEPA filters instead of the regular filters on the central air system. That's all going to help them during those times. Keeping the windows closed too, if I didn't say that already. When it comes to identifying, the air quality, is just showing them that, hey, on channel 6 every day they do an air quality, and if the air quality is yellow or red, we recommend you stay indoors and maybe wait to go shopping until you have a green day, and not the band Green Day, if anybody knows the band Green Day. Okay. But the green level days, those are the days that you can go out shopping, or those are the days that you can go out and do your more adventurous activities. If you do exercise or walk around the block like you normally do, maybe on a low, a red pollution day, you just don't do that. You skip that because it may alleviate or cause more issues if they go out. Asbestos in the work environment is also hazardous. It causes long-term lung disease. You'll see it in older homes. The only reason this is considered an outside risk and not an inside risk is a lot of people, and I shouldn't say this, if they're doing their own home improvements, I guess it's a risk for them, but we're looking more in the industrial side where people are, maybe their work environment, they go out and they pull asbestos out of homes, and maybe they don't wear an N95 like they should, or the right proper equipment like they should. Pollen obviously always worsens allergies, which can worsen lung disease. So just think about that. If they have allergies, just making sure they follow up with their doctor on taking allergy medication or taking shots. And then if, that's a high pollen level day, they just stay indoors. And then radiation obviously causes long-term hazards, birth defects. Probably not something we're going to run into high radiation areas, but there are some cities out there that have been still being affected by some of the nuclear tests that were done back in the day. And so, maybe that's something to talk to them about is, hey, your area is high for those nuclear effects and radiation, and maybe we should not live here anymore. So we could already covered this, but stay indoors during, farming chemical sprays, wear approved masks when dealing with asbestos, or on days that are high in pollen count or high, exhaust, or God, my words are left me. Sorry. Change out your air filters. Make sure you have high effective filters, and then also give sunscreen to reduce some of the radiation that comes from the sun. Workplace hazards, again, just asbestos in construction, bloodborne pathogens, lead in construction, hazardous chemicals, fall risks, all something to just talk to your patient about. Where do you work, and what do you do exactly if they do work, and then what are your high risks there at your job. All right. So you guys will hear this a lot, and something that I focused on a lot when we were doing our community health is social determinants. And we've kind of already been talking about it the whole time, but just kind of putting that term behind you will speak words to other people as you work through the healthcare fields and dealing with other stakeholders. Really, your social determinants determine your health. And so if you see here, 40% of our health is based just on what we consume as consumers, right? So if we smoke, that is one of the biggest problems for health, right? Diet and exercise. If we're overweight, if we eat a lot of fast food, that causes a lot of issues with our health. Alcohol use, drinking excessively, drinking every night. Bad sleep habits, not getting enough sleep will definitely cause issues. We all know that, the studies are out there that EMS providers are at higher risk of, heart attacks and stroke due to the fact that they have this circadian rhythm that's all off because we don't get enough sleep and we get tons of interrupted sleep. And then the social connectiveness. If we're isolated, we're by ourselves, we're hidden in the home, we're more likely to be depressed, we're more likely to be lonely, which then actually worsens our actual medical conditions. And then you go into the 30% of our health problems involve genetics, right? And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. You just were handed bad genes. But if your consumer behaviors are a little bit better, maybe you won't cause those genetic problems to worsen. And so, like my example would be, I'm sure I'm at high risk for high blood pressure just due to my genes. But if I eat good and I exercise, and I don't smoke, then my risk of high blood pressure is probably lower than anybody else in the family, right? If they didn't follow those. Social economic factors contribute to 20% of what affects our health. So that's your education level, your job status, how much money you bring into the home. And we can prove this with, EMS data alone in some of the bigger cities. They say, look at where all of our call volume is. It's at the area where people are at low economic status, and our lower call volumes are in the areas of higher economic status. So, that's just proven in EMS too. And then the last one, you see that 10% of our health determinant is done by healthcare. So really, as we're going out being community paramedics or community EMTs, kind of think about this chart and say, what should I be focusing on? Should I be just focusing on giving them meds and giving them albuterol treatments and doing all this stuff that involves their healthcare? Or should I be focused more on their habits and their social economic factors that I can help actually change? And if you could do that, heck, that's 60% of that person's healthcare, right? So you've made a 60% difference if you're able to just change any of those things. That's huge. Does anybody have any comments on that?
I think it's kind of a big deal because we're right in their face and around them all the time anyway, just on 911 calls. If we could, if you could take out even 10% of the consumer and the socioeconomic, you'd make a huge change.
Exactly. And I don't know if you guys remember me saying it before, but we had this awesome chems bag that had IV supplies and it had medications, and I thought going out there I was going to change the world having all this stuff in my bag. I can tell you I've only used the BG machine out of that thing, and I think we gave somebody glucose. Other than that, I never touched any of the anti-nausea medication. I never touched any of the IV supplies. And that goes back to that 10%, right? So you're 100% correct. If you can change these other issues, that's really where the problems are. The healthcare will follow. And so when we do that med assessment, that's only 10% of what we really should be focused on. We really should be focused on, like you said, changing their diet, changing their behaviors, and hopefully helping them become more financially stable. And if you do that, your patient will automatically just turn around, and you'll see less calls, you'll see less falls, you'll see a lot of less problems with them, and basically they'll be happier. Hold on one real quick, guys. Sorry about that, guys. Like I said, I stay at work and then I get distracted. All right. Anything else? Anybody has any comments on this graph or chart or thoughts on it?
Yeah, Travis, I was just thinking of that 10% healthcare. Would that include like preventative health screenings, that Medicare pays for, preventable dental screenings? Would that fall into that 10% category?
It would, Bob. But I think you're identifying an issue that if you fix their income and you fix their ability to go get these preventative screenings, that'll affect that 10% even more. So I think everything kind of rolls into each other, but we all know that lower income people tend to utilize the ER more than anybody else. They tend to use that as their primary care doctor, and they usually don't go see those preventative maintenance. So is that something where if you fix their income status, you say, hey, obviously you can't get them more money, you can't make them richer. But what you can do is say, hey, we can say with Medicaid, we can get you a primary care doctor, and then between you and the primary care doctor suggesting that they do these preventative medicine things, that hopefully that'll all affect each other, right? You can tell somebody till you're blue in the face that, hey, you should go get this done or that done. But if they don't realize it's free, or if it thinks it has a cost to it, they're not going to do it. Or if they don't have transportation to go have it done. So preventative medicine is great, but they need to know how to get there, what the direction is, and all that stuff. And then I think they'll fall through with that once they meet that. All right. Good job, guys. Keep going here. We're almost done with this section. So social determinants, just kind of thinking about all this stuff. Religion definitely has an effect on people's social determinants. You know, some people are very deeply seated in their beliefs. They're never going to change their opinion. Why even try? There are some people down here in the Boise area that don't seek medical help at all, and so they could have something that could kill them, and they don't care. They'll refuse any medical care. You know, we think about the LDS, or not LDS, the what are the other ones that don't believe in blood transfusions?
Witness,
What was that?
Jehovah Witness?
Jehovah Witness, thank you. You know, Jehovah Witness are all about you know, blood transfusions. And so there are some religious beliefs that we're never going to be able to change. But we need to identify those religious beliefs and then try to figure out if there's other ways that we can utilize that religion to help boost some of the other things in their decisions. Also, end of life decisions are going to be based off of their religion too, right? Like, so if your religion believes in burials and big funerals, that may, you know, skew somebody's opinion versus other things. So just some things to think about. Culture, we talked about this before in our earlier culture class, but once again, it's super important. You know, it influences their outlook on life. Their diet choices are going to be different depending on their culture. You know, Hispanic people are very tortilla, a lot of carbs, and, you know, a lot of different things versus maybe, you know, your Japanese that are very fish and rice and stuff like that. And so just thinking about that when you think about their diets. And just remember that their culture may go against your customs or your beliefs. That doesn't mean it's wrong. Just try to deal with that the best you can and don't get frustrated with it. Social economic, you know, what is their financial capacity? What is their education level? What is their work status? And what is their availability of resources? We've kind of beat that one down pretty well. What is their relationship? You know, have they had a significant other that has passed away? Sometimes that affects how aggressive somebody is at trying to change their health care, right? We've all heard that people who have their significant other die now become depressed. They don't want to really focus on stuff, and they're ready to pass themselves. And so, you know, just be realizing that when you walk into the home that, you know, maybe you can't change that because of that thought process. They just want to go back if they have a religion that believes in heaven. You know, their whole goal is just to pass and be with that person that they lost for the rest of their lives in heaven. You know, what can we do to find people that may assist them from their day-to-day issues? So find out how they're currently doing with people around them. Married couples may also affect the ability to get assistance. One may be willing to get acceptance, but won't because the other one doesn't want them to. Maybe the feeling that they're no longer important to that person or no longer in need of that person. So just be aware of that. And then, you know, back to culture and relationships, but a lot of times the females will refer to the male in order to make a decision before they make a decision. So kind of mixing those all up there. Age can be definitely a social determinant. You know, as each generation comes out, we all hate each other's generations. Like, you know, as right now, you know, it's the snowflakes are out and we don't understand them. Previous to that was, you know, kind of the Generation X, which, the older people didn't understand, and we kind of just deal with it over time. But we got to realize that each age generation is different, and they approach things different. And so with me, I have to approach the elderly a little bit different than what I approach a younger person. Technologically handicapped, if you're older, sometimes we struggle a little bit more with technology versus the younger people. They embrace technology, they love technology. um, the younger people now want to track their COVID status via their app, and so that everybody knows that, hey, if I got COVID, I push a little button on my app and it tells you, hey, whether or not we've actually interacted with each other and how high of a risk that you have COVID. And so kind of some interesting stuff that's out there with technology that maybe the older generation doesn't understand or doesn't want to embrace. And then obviously, as we get older, we have an increased risk of disease. All right, let's see if this video actually plays. This is a really good interview with this guy that this lady does in order to kind of determine what his social determinants are. If this doesn't play on my side, I will give you guys a copy of the link, okay?
Hi, I'm Ariel Singer, and I'm the Innovations Director at the Oregon Primary Care Association. We put together a short video to demonstrate empathic inquiry. Empathic inquiry is a motivational interviewing and trauma-informed care-based approach to social determinants of health interviewing. The goal of empathic inquiry is to make the interviewing process feel less like data collection and more like an opportunity to connect with patients, to hear their stories, and to really listen to their life experience. So what you'll see in the video is that we'll start with an introduction and explain why we're doing the interview and set expectations for how long it will take. We'll then move on to providing a warning to patients that there might be some sensitive topics in the interview and they can decline to participate at any point. We'll then demonstrate a few questions from the Prepare Social Determinants of Health interviewing tool, and I'll incorporate reflective listening and affirmations, which are from the motivational interviewing approach to working with patients. We'll end by asking about the patient's priorities and arranging follow-up. Thanks for watching. Hi, Charles. My name is Ariel.
Hey, Ariel.
I'm community health worker here at the clinic.
Nice.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
So we're expanding the way that we work with our patients and trying to partner with you to understand more about your life and explore the ways that we can support your health and well-being more fully.
Nice.
Yeah, so part of doing that is finding out more about your experiences, and I'm hoping to spend some time with you today asking some questions
Okay.
about what's going on in your life outside the clinic, and I was wondering if that would be okay with you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. So it'll take about 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So thanks for agreeing to participate in the process, and I just want to let you know that some of the questions that I'm going to ask you might be on sensitive topics.
Okay.
And if at any point you feel like you don't want to answer one of the questions or you want to stop us, please feel free to do so.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get started. So the first question that I wanted to ask is how hard do you find it to pay for the very basics in your life, like food, housing, heating, medical care, and medications? Would you say that paying for those things is not hard at all, somewhat hard, or very hard?
I'd say somewhat hard.
Okay. So if we could go through some specifics, I'd like to do that. So let's start with food. Is that hard to pay for?
Has been lately. My wife was pregnant and we just gave birth to our baby girl.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And due to the pregnancy, she's been wanting to eat more, and we're also trying to eat healthier. So that's been a challenge to afford those foods day in, day out. I mean, I work for a restaurant, so I wash dishes at a local restaurant, and times they, give us food to bring home, which is nice. I'll say it's not on the healthy side, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so we'll say yes to that one. It sounds like health is really important for your family at this
It
time.
is now. It's something about a pregnancy and having a newborn in the house is just making us more self-conscious about those things.
Changing your perspective.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay. How about utilities?
Some months it's hard, but it's fine for now.
Okay. And how about transportation?
Tough lately. My car broke down last week, which has made it difficult to get to work on time. So I've been taking the bus in the meantime, and I'm just waiting, saving up funds to get that repair done.
Okay. So how about medicine or medical care?
That's covered.
Okay, great. Health insurance?
Again, covered. We
Okay.
have OHP.
Okay, terrific. Clothing?
Clothing has been a challenge lately. Maternity clothes ain't cheap, and the baby's, growing pretty quickly, and she's demanding new types of wardrobe every so often, and that has not been easy. Unexpected for sure.
Yeah, so some new expenses there.
Yeah.
Okay, how about rent or mortgage payment?
That's not too bad. We live with my mom, and so that's helping out a lot in that department, I'll say.
Great. And how about childcare?
Well, mom's a grandma now, so she is able to help take care of our little one.
Okay, so that sounds like it's not a problem item.
No.
Okay. And how about phone?
Oh man, that phone bill. Something I take care of, and it's another stress financially.
Yeah, okay. So say yes to phone. Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned?
Between you and me, I would like my wife to work again. But no, child labor ain't easy, and then there's this whole breastfeeding process, which is another layer of stress, I'll say. But hopefully she will have the energy to go back to work. That would help pay for a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
Just help.
Yeah, okay. So the next question that I'd like to ask you is related to relationships.
Okay.
How often do you feel lonely or isolated from those around you? Never, rarely, sometimes, often, or always?
Well, I see him every day. Isn't that okay?
Well, the question is more about not just that you see people, but that you feel connected with them, that you get emotional support if things are either tough or if you have something good that you want to celebrate together.
Oh, yeah. Well, try to remain positive, but there are days where I just need to be alone. And
All right, so I'm gonna stop it there. I don't think we need to go through the whole interview process, but you notice a couple of things. She did clarify some things like, hey, I'm not necessarily asking who you hang out with or how often you see him, but kind of how is that relationship between them. I thought that was good. I did get a crack out of him wishing that his wife would go back to work. Just the way he said it was kind of funny. So anyways, that's just kind of how you can kind of determine some of the social determinants, and notice she's not doing a lot of talking, he's doing a lot of the talking, and she's just either clarifying or repeating what he says in a summary so that he understands that she's listening. So anybody have any further questions about the video? Not, we will move on or watch it over again. I'm going to skip this one. You guys don't have eClinicalWorks. I don't need to do that. All right, so solving determinants, once again, is just changing behaviors. Like we said, changing behaviors is hard to do. Sometimes that can take up to 2 months to truly change that behavior. So just be patient with them. Understand that they're going to fall on their faces. Let them know it's okay to fall, just as long as you pick yourself up and you fall forward, right? Outreach to resources in your area. You don't necessarily have to be the person that makes the changes. You're just the person that's referring them out to other places where they can get help. Assist them with any applications or forms that they may have to do. Definitely if they have some sort of education deficit that they're unable to fully understand how to fill out an application. And then just educate the patient on how much their behaviors and impacts or their behaviors and their social status affects their health. Kind of like how I showed you guys that graph. Is that something that you could actually print off and show your patients and say, look, you would get a 40% improvement if you just changed not smoking versus, if you exercise a little bit more, maybe that would be a 40% change, or, that's a huge change for your healthcare. So sharing that with them would be super important. All right, another quick little video, and then we'll be done with this module. We'll take a break and then we'll come back. This is just a safety of the physical environment, kind of summarizes everything we kind of went over. And it won't work. So let me try something here. Let's copy. You guys might have to watch it on your own instead of through me. Oh, there we
In
go.
order to improve the health of the world's poorest and most vulnerable populations, we need to address the root causes of health problems. At every stage of life, health is determined by complex interactions between social and economic factors, the physical environment, biology, and an individual's behavior. Collectively, these factors are known as the social determinants of health. They are formally defined by the World Health Organization as the conditions in which people are born, grow, work, live, and age, and the wider set of forces and systems shaping the conditions of daily life. This video will focus on 3 of the 12 social determinants of health. To begin, we will talk about income and social status. An individual's income can greatly impact their health. As income increases, health status improves, and we will see less illness and longer life expectancies. Income can determine the status of other social determinants of health, such as food security and quality of housing. If individuals have less flexible income to spend on housing, they may not be able to live in a safe, high-quality neighborhood, which can impact overall health. This brings us to our discussion of the second social determinant of health, the physical environment. The physical environment includes water, air, workplaces, homes, schools, communities, and roads. Some factors in the physical environment that can affect health include safe water, clean air, and safe, healthy homes, workplaces, schools, and communities. There is plenty of evidence to suggest that an individual's neighborhood can greatly affect their health. Research has shown that access to resources such as healthy, affordable food facilities, green spaces such as parks, recreational facilities, and healthcare options leads to better health outcomes. The safety of the physical environment can encourage or prevent people from accessing these resources. If the neighborhood has low crime rates, individuals are more likely to be physically active outside the home, which leads to better overall health. Access to transportation can also have an effect. If an inexpensive grocery store is too far away to walk to, people may have to rely on cars or public transportation to reach it. Better access to transportation can help improve an individual's health, but walkability is also important to think about. Walkability is a measure that determines how much a neighborhood encourages residents to walk to locations, rather than using motorized transportation. If individuals can walk to resources, physical activity and overall health will increase. Overall, an individual's physical environment can either promote or discourage healthy lifestyle behaviors. Therefore, it is important to think about the physical environment when assessing someone's health status. The final social determinant of health we are going to talk about is the social environment, which includes individual support networks, as well as the broader social system of communities. For example, institutions such as sports leagues that allow sharing of resources and helps create connections with others. Greater support from family, friends, and communities has been associated with greater health for a number of reasons. Firstly, creating a more cohesive community can lead to greater feelings of empowerment, leading to improved health behaviors. Social support also helps individuals deal with hardships by providing emotional guidance, information, and other forms of assistance.
Overall, high-quality social environments can inspire individuals to make changes in their lifestyle, to maintain a healthy mental state, and to overcome challenges presented by poverty. We discussed 3 social determinants that can significantly impact the health of individuals. What policy changes can take place in order to better address these issues? Firstly, increased access to transportation services is an option that can have a positive impact on
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. Just a little bit early, but I think
vulnerable
we all know that
populations.
if you make some changes within your community, they can definitely help those things. So, all right, any questions about this module? Or anybody want to state anything? All right, with that, I will give you guys a 15-minute break. We'll meet back at 8:15. Sorry, 7:15 for some of you people that live in a different time zone than me. So 15 minutes, we'll meet back. Thanks, guys.
How do we manage our own stress from the job, and what do we do to recognize unmanaged stress in our coworkers? Well, the Code Green campaign is focused on helping EMS providers recognize and
All right. Hopefully everybody's back. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if you're here? Got one. Got two. Got three. 4, 5, 6. All right, that's good. Well, I figured everybody else is either on the phone or asleep.
I'm here also.
All right. So next thing we're going to cover is the safety and well-being. This is kind of not necessarily the safety and well-being of your patients, but the safety and well-being of EMS providers. We're going to go over some topics about stress, about empathy, some safety things to think about when you're out in the field doing these type of doing these type of appointments. And so let's go ahead and just dive right into this. So components of well-being, there's basically 4 components as EMS providers that we need to think about in order to keep us healthy within this organization. Number 1 is the physical health of ourselves. We need to keep ourselves in good physical condition. That obviously decreases the risk of injury, sickness, or disability. We all know that if you're poorly fit and you're on the side of the road trying to pull somebody off of the side of the road, climbing up, as I remember as a kid when I was a younger EMT, climbing up Whiteberg grade there with a patient on a backboard, you got to be in pretty good physical condition in order to do that. And we definitely don't want to injure ourselves because we're not taking the time to exercise on our time off. And so, we need to make sure that we keep our muscle strength, we keep our cardiac endurance. We definitely don't want to become a patient ourselves while we're on scenes. We also want to be a good example to your patients. It would be kind of hard to walk into a home and tell your patient, you need to lose weight, you need to do something better for your health when you're heavier than the patient themselves, right? So I think we need to think about that when we go in and talk to people about how they should be doing things. If you've never been on a low salt diet, try it for about a week. It's definitely different. And then, at least you'd be able to kind of know what the patient's going through when you're asking them to do a low salt diet or, cut certain things out of their diet. Next one's going to be your mental well-being. We're EMS professionals. We never sleep. When we do sleep, it's interrupted. Most of us have multiple jobs and, we're exposed to pretty traumatic events. There's a lot of things that we see and we do that most people, in their lifetimes will never see. It's weird because we have a culture of people that can sit there and talk about the most disgusting things in the world and sit there and eat while we're doing it, and other people can't do that. Kind of the improvement with chems is being able to kind of reduce that workload because you're kind of based on appointments only. You're not being called out constantly to go help somebody in in an emergent situation. You're not dealing with as much traumatic events, so you're not seeing, some of the trauma that we see out there. You do feel a sense of achievement when you make somebody improve in their healthcare. So when you do something amazing within your chems program, it's going to make you feel great. You made a change and you made a difference in the world, which, in the 911 field, sometimes we don't always get, right? We pick people up, we take care of them for 20 minutes to an hour, and then we never see them again. We have no idea what ended up happening to them. And so kind of where we're following people a little bit long term and we're able to see what actually happens and progresses throughout their lives, it's kind of nice to see that. And then, being able to see the patient outcomes like we just said. Next is going to be emotional well-being. We as providers have a natural instinct to help. With 911, we had that instant gratification. We show up on an accident, you extricate that patient, you provide good patient care to the hospital, and damn it, they made it to the hospital with a pulse, so we feel good, right? And so that the 911 gives us that instant gratification versus the chems. It demands more time and it takes time to make changes, and sometimes it takes a lot of your effort to make those changes, so just be aware of that. Also, you're going to build a connection with some of these patients. You're going to know their family, you're going to know their kids, you might know everything about them, and when they die, it's going to be rough for some of you. So just be aware of that when you start to deal with some of the chem stuff. And then also that failure. You put a lot of effort into somebody, you've worked hard on them, you've tried to make them do a change, but they won't change. And so you feel like a failure that you couldn't help somebody. So just be aware of that as you're going out and providing these chems appointments. Spiritual well-being, everybody's a little bit different on how they do spiritual well-being. Some people it's dealing with religious beliefs. Some people believe in meditation. We all have personal ethics that we deal with. And then it's as easy as getting out on a walk, interacting with nature, or, getting away and disappearing for a few weeks where nobody can get a hold of you. So that's my favorite thing, is to go out on a cruise out in the middle of the ocean where my phone won't ring and nobody knows where I'm at. So just some things that we have to think about is we need to think about our spiritual needs too, not just our emotional and our physical. All right, types of stress. What is empathy? It's the ability to really understand how someone else is feeling. And there's kind of three of them. There's the cognitive, which is the think it. There's the emotional, where we feel it. And then there's the compassion, empathy, which is we're moved by it. Okay. And so with cognitive empathy, the think it, it's when you understand what someone's feeling or understand or how they're doing. You kind of take somebody's perspective, and you don't necessarily have to agree with it, but you understand it, right? That would be where you really haven't lived it. You just kind of can see their point of view or see where they're coming from. Emotional empathy is when you actually put yourself in their shoes. You actually feel their emotions, whether it be something in your past that's kind of connected with that patient. And you're like, let's say patient had a abusive relationship and you were involved in an abusive relationship, right? That's kind of that emotional empathy where you can sit with them at an emotional level and actually understand exactly where they're coming from. This can definitely drain on your emotions, so just be aware of that if you are connecting with a patient that way. And it can also lead to burnout. Compassionate empathy. This is where you have that true concern for people, but you kind of keep that emotional distance. I think this is where most of us lie in the EMS field. Like we feel concern for people and we definitely want to help them, but a lot of times we haven't in the past because we're afraid to get too close. But hopefully this drives helping in the future too, and it doesn't burn us out. And I think cognitively and mentally, a lot of us have this, right? You see a lot of stuff out there in the world, like we said, that a lot of people haven't seen, and we're able to kind of push that off to the side and say, we can keep doing this and helping people because we understand the long-term goal is the more people we help, the better off for the community. Compassion fatigue. You will hear this more and more as we move forward with EMS. It's something that, maybe they didn't really talk about before that they talk about a lot right now. It's just a state of mind that is experienced by people that tend to help other people. And it doesn't necessarily need to be healthcare providers. Your patients' families can have compassion fatigue. They have helped so much to the point where they no longer seem to care anymore about the outcome of that person or that patient. Doesn't mean they truly don't care. It's just that they've gotten to that point where they've become fatigued in helping out. This usually involves a lot of tension, a lot of stress. They're constantly dealing with it. Nothing seems to get better. And this can cause secondary stress to that person that's helping out. So the caregiver can actually get post-traumatic stress disorder from this compassion fatigue if it gets too bad. So real quick, I have a quick video on compassion fatigue and then we'll move forward. Sorry, guys.
Compassion fatigue is really extends beyond being empathetic with someone. This is something that can affect anyone who works with people, and it's especially important for people who work in very trauma-filled situations, like in the criminal justice system, to be aware of the fact that working with people with problems can become emotionally exhausting. Compassion fatigue takes some time to develop. It's not something that's going to come on in the first 2 weeks where someone is on a job. It really extends over a longer period of time where it just becomes a weariness of listening to and responding to and helping people with their problems. Compassion resilience is a really important, relatively new concept that is being examined. Compassion resilience is the counterbalance to compassion fatigue. For people who do work with people with complex problems, it can be very rewarding and very professionally and personally satisfying to see people make accomplishments and reach goals in their recovery journey. So that positive response that you feel both as a team and as an individual would be considered compassion resilience and can help to outweigh the effects of compassion fatigue with working with a very complex population. The difference between compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma is that vicarious trauma resembles primary trauma. What I mean by that is that the symptoms of vicarious trauma are often the same symptoms that people experience when they have experienced a primary trauma, such as hypervigilance, being very jumpy, having a lot of difficulty sleeping, having difficulty concentrating. Compassion fatigue, on the other hand, is more of an emotional exhaustion or a fatigue in working with people with complex problems, but it doesn't include developing symptoms of trauma that vicarious trauma does. Burnout is another term that you frequently hear people talk about, especially in organizations that work with people. But burnout is something that develops over a long period of time. Similar to compassion fatigue, it is a form of emotional exhaustion, but it doesn't necessarily arise from the interactions with the people, the clients that people actually work with. It can result from work overload, too little time to do too much. It can result from work conflict among coworkers and your supervisors. And burnout really takes a while to develop, whereas compassion fatigue can develop in a relatively short period of time. Burnout takes a while, and it's when people really eventually just become ineffective in the job that they're doing. I think that one of the major difficulties that organizations have when working with people with complex trauma histories, especially those in the justice system, is they don't care for themselves very well. And people who are trained in behavioral health, such as social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, and others, part of their training and education is to practice self-care. Whether they do or not is a different issue, but they're at least aware of the fact that when you work with people, you need to take care of yourself also so that you can help them effectively. In the criminal justice system, there's no similar kind of process in the education of going to law school or getting your degree in criminal justice and becoming a probation officer. Basically, the attitude in many criminal justice agencies is just to suck it up and to just move on to the next case. And we're realizing that that is not a very effective way to keep your workforce well. It's just as important for people who are justice professionals to practice self-care around the issues of compassion fatigue and burnout and vicarious trauma as it is the behavioral health professionals. It can affect anybody in the criminal justice system. It can affect people who sit on juries. It can affect the prosecutors, defense attorneys, probation officers, correctional officers, and judges. Everyone who works with people in that environment, especially as they get to know defendants and participants' stories more, they can experience the same kinds of difficulties that burnout and compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. The kinds of areas to really be on the lookout for in yourself and in coworkers would be probably the most obvious first step would be if someone's work product begins to slip. If they've previously been a very conscientious coworker or person who you supervise and they no longer are, that may be a red flag. Also taking into consideration their health, their general medical health. People who begin to take a lot of sick leave, are tardy a lot, have a lot of illness, also might be underlying signs of vicarious trauma or compassion fatigue. You also can look at mental health issues and included in that substance use. If again, you see an increase or a change in the kinds of ways in which people deal with stress, maybe they become more angry, more irritable, become more frustrated, detached, no longer are participating in activities in the workplace that they typically have. Those would be all signs that you should look for and be concerned about in your coworkers and also in yourself as you become more aware of the importance of self-care working with this population. There are both individual level and organizational level ways of addressing self-care and wellness. There are lots and lots of resources available through employee assistance programs. And if they don't have specific workplace wellness programs around dealing with stress, dealing with complex trauma, ask them to develop a program and tell them that your organization needs that, because that organization can't simply be the only one who they serve that need that input. Also, you can practice self-care in that you can seek out different forms of stress relieving exercises, practicing mindfulness, meditation, yoga. All of these have been shown to reduce stress on an individual level. And obviously, if people find that those interventions, those practices aren't helpful, to seek professional care through a psychologist, psychiatrist, or social worker who specializes in dealing with traumatic stress, dealing with complex issues like this.
All right. So moving on from there, stress. Who wants it? Well, depends on the type of stress, right? There's eustress and there's distress. Eustress is kind of that positive stress. It motivates people to do things within their lives. So, you know, I personally have a lot of stress at work, but it motivates me to complete my job performance. Distress is where you have stress that makes people feel overwhelmed to the point where they don't feel like they can do anything anymore. And so you definitely have to balance your stress out. You know, creating deadlines for people may be a eustress because it's a positive stress, right? It makes them achieve that goal. The distress may be if I say that the deadline is by midnight tonight and I haven't given you any time to complete the task. And so definitely some fine lines there with stress. And so with that, stress affects the CHEMS providers in different ways, or anybody in that fact. You know, it causes headaches. You can have increase in infections, tight muscles, fatigue, hyperventilation. Sometimes we make bad decisions when we're stressed. You know, we may actually have nightmares or unable to make decisions due to the fact that we're so stressed. The other thing is just your emotions. You know, some people can get really irritable when they're stressed. Some people get depressed. Some people become alienated. And then others are behaviors, right? When you're stressed, you have more accident prone, maybe a change in appetite, maybe a change in your sexual drive, or increased use of alcohol, tobacco, or drugs. So these are things that we need to be aware of as we're providers to make sure that we don't fall into these stress modes. I think when I am mostly stressed, it's the alienation and probably the increase in alcohol intake for me personally. So, you know, just being aware that when I do those two things, I should probably reevaluate how my stress is doing. Stress management is done in multiple different ways. We kind of talked about this before, but you know, having time away, having positive attitudes, creating small goals. Maybe taking an hour and getting a massage every month may be a way that you know you deal with some of your stress. And so, you know, when you start to notice those stressors happening, make sure that you find ways that you can manage it before it becomes too bad. Already covered that. Provider mental health. I'm not going to go in the video about Code Green, but if you guys want to look it up, there is a campaign called Code Green Campaign. You know, it's basically this first responder mental health organization that focuses on trying to help people identify when they're having issues within their the EMS community that affects their mental health. And so the Code Green campaign has like a chat board that people go on and kind of express some problems they're having, and it's all kept confidential, but basically saying like, hey, you know, I have problems with this and this is how I've kind of dealt with it. And it's just nice to know that there's other people out there within the EMS community that share or have the same kind of stresses or concerns as we do. Substance abuse, obviously, if you're stressed or you're dealing with too much stuff in your life, sometimes you can run to substances to help reduce those stressors. Some things that cause continuous stressors is that continuous trauma, our broken sleep cycle again, work hours. You know, we work a lot of hours, we get paid very little. Issues at home, and then lack of mental health resources in the area. And so some of the signs that you have substance abuse, of course, is lack of interest in your job or your performance. You're always late or tardy. You're withdrawn, or you come up with excuses on why you're not doing stuff or why things happen. And then, increased sick utilization. So as providers, we should be staring at our other providers, making sure that we don't identify any of these issues, especially in the paramedic world where we have easy access to narcotics and other substances. Definitely something to be watching out for your coworkers. And if you identify any of these issues, bring it up as soon as possible. How we can help, obviously report to your supervisor. Most companies have a good EPA program that you can start getting help with. There's information on recovery centers all over the state, and support your other EMS providers, and also try to reduce judgment. Don't be like, oh, this person's using drugs, so they're out of our agency, or they're not the same person they were before. Try to get them help, try to get them in the right direction, and be surprised. Maybe it's just that stress at the time that was causing them to abuse that substance. Critical incident stress debriefing. If you guys have not taken the course, at least somebody within your organization has not taken this course on how to do critical incident stress debriefing, I highly recommend that somebody does. Obviously, the CISD is right after an initial exposure. So something major happens within your organization. The person that's trained in this is dispatched out immediately. Usually within 24 or 48 hours, you get everybody together and you start discussing the incident. This could also be allowed for survivors to be part of, but you can also have just caregivers there. And this is a time not to critique the calls, but just to discuss what you saw and what you felt. Every single person in that room is going to have a different feeling, a different approach, a different way on how things happen in their brain. It's just like when, we talked about before where, if somebody held up a convenience store and somebody shot somebody, that every single person that witnessed that convenience store robbery is going to have a different story, right, of what happened, a different recollection, different view of what happened. And it all depends on kind of where they were standing or their views in life or things like that. And so we got to just remember that when it comes to critical incident stress debriefings too, everybody has a different view. Once again, usually less than 24 hours after the event. Try to make sure there's licensed counselors available at the debriefing, just because if somebody has a negative reaction to talking about it that quickly, that there's somebody there that could help them professionally. And then there's usually a follow-up a few days later or a week later, just to make sure that everybody's still doing okay. We have these probably a good handful of times a year within our agency, but highly recommend that if you guys don't have something, to set something up so that is available if you guys do have to deal with some of these things. And it's not just going to be your EMS agency, invite fire department, police department. Even if it involves some of the tow truck drivers and stuff like that, people that may be actually influenced in the actual call itself. There's kind of 7 steps to critical incident stress debriefing. We're not going to go into great detail about them, but we'll just talk about it. First, people kind of have their introductions. This is who I am. This is how I was involved in this situation. Like, hey, my name's Travis, and I was the primary paramedic that was on this call. Next one is actually putting out the facts. The moderator will say, okay, this is the facts. We had a T-bone style accident in which we had 1 death, and this person died of, let's just say, hemorrhaging. And then they put it out to everybody to kind of express their thoughts, right? My thoughts about this incident were, we showed up on scene. This is kind of how we reacted, and then just kind of going through the story through each person's eyes. They talk about some of the symptoms that may be involved with their feelings. They teach that this is a normal sensation, a normal feeling for people. It's okay to question yourself. It's okay to question what happened. And then we kind of bring it back and re-entry back into, now that we've discussed this and now that we've done everything, just remember that, this was a discussion between all of us. It doesn't leave this facility, and that this was just a way to kind of help get this out so that everybody can deal with it. Does everybody have critical incident stress debriefing in their agency?
Yes.
Good. Anybody else?
We do in the Mini-Cash area. I don't know that Cash has done it for a long time, so I'm not sure the resource there, but Minidoka does.
Gotcha. If you guys don't have it, there are some great resources, and you can reach out to me. I think you guys all have my email. I have a lady that comes up, a lady through the state that pays for a guy to come up and teach critical incident stress debriefing. I was able to get the training for free. Like you guys said, I don't actually do it myself very often. It's usually outsourced to some other agency that does it for our group. But I am trained in it. We have used it after, and it wasn't just for our EMS agency. We actually used it for a baseball team after one of the players ended up getting kneed in the head and ended up having a pretty significant skull fracture and brain bleed. And so we were able to immediately go back to the baseball field the next day and start having people talk about what they saw, what happened, and just give those kids an opportunity to discuss that. So something to think about when you guys do it in your environments is it's not just necessarily just EMS. You can also bring it out to the people that were affected in a large group like that. Next is the stages of death and dying. This is something that I actually discuss with my patients, especially if it's a very sensitive call. We had a kid that drowned probably, it was this summer, so a few months ago. We were unable to recover the body for over 8 hours, and we were able to recover the body, which was great. I actually had the patient and the family ride in the back of the ambulance to the funeral home with us so that they could spend their time saying their goodbyes before we took them to the funeral home. And some of the stuff that I discussed to them is, there are stages of death, and just be aware of the stages because you're going to go through it. So I talked to the family afterwards and said, first, nobody could ever imagine their child dying, right? It's definitely not something that anybody wants to know or hear. The next thing is you're probably going to deny it ever happened. You're going to wake up tomorrow and say, no, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Everything is going to be okay. Eventually that's going to turn into anger. That anger could happen right away. Could be like, God damn it, this happened. And, they throw things around and get pissed, take it out on other family members. And then the next one is going to be that bargaining stage where they're reaching out to God or whatever thought process they are out there and saying, please bring this person back. I'll do anything in order to get this person back. Eventually the reality sticks in, and this is where that depression comes in. So like with the family, I told them this is probably one of those things where if you stay in that depression stage for too long, definitely need to get some help, right? Definitely don't want that to definitely take an effect on your own life. And so as family members, we just need to watch out for each other because this is a very sensitive time. The next one is testing or seeking new passion or challenge. And the last one is the acceptance, which can take years if they ever accept. I've known some people that have deaths in their lives that still haven't accepted that it's happened. So obviously the stages of grief can be short or they can be very long. But just talking to people about these and making them know that it's okay to have these stages, it's okay to have these feelings, and just to watch out for each other when they are in these certain stages, especially the anger and depression stages, that those are going to be the really hard ones for them, and to make sure they seek help if they find themselves in those too long. So definitely utilize this. I don't memorize this. Obviously, I brought it up on my phone when I talked to them just because I don't have this memorized, but it kind of helps bring that into people's perspective that, hey, this is okay to feel this way. And we're all aware that you're going to go through this. All right. Now we're going to talk about some chem safety, right? What are we taught in school? We are taught scene safety, BSI, right? But in the chems world, it's a little bit different. It's not the obvious we're used to looking at. We think of scene safe, we think of power lines down, we think of the bad guy that's holding the gun. We think of, blood squirting everywhere. We need our BSI so we're not, getting infections. But here's some 15 things to consider when you're doing chems appointments, okay? Number one, stay in touch. Always let your dispatch know where you're going, or your supervisors or your other crew. You may want to share an electric calendar of your schedules. And for us at Payette, we just created a call on our CAD every single time. So I don't know if everybody gets CADs. I think Grangeville does not. You guys still call to get times from your dispatch. But we actually have a call that's generated every time we go out on these chems appointments, not just for our safety, but also for tracking purposes of how many calls we do. Number two, keep valuables out of sight. Carry as little as possible. Don't take any personal belongings. Don't advertise your wealth. Remember, you're going to be dealing with some people that necessarily don't have money, people that we don't know their criminal status. And so obviously you don't want to go around and flash off your brand new iWatch, right? Know exactly where you're going. Be familiar with the area. Drive around if you're not familiar with the area and just plan for a good exit strategy. Locate any spots of concerns. I mean, I'm looking at this house right here in this picture, and I don't even know if I'd enter the house with it being boarded up like that. So, but definitely be aware of where you're going into. Number four, keep a buffer zone. Park where you can get out. Don't park right up next to the person in front of you. Always have a way out in case for some reason that you guys get pushed in there, right? Definitely if something goes bad in the house, you want to be able to get out. Number five, be strategic. Lock your vehicle doors, park in lighted areas, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of other residents in the area. You can definitely, especially in some cities where you don't know everybody, you can definitely get in some areas that you don't feel comfortable with. There's a couple of trailer parks in Payette that I probably wouldn't go on my day-to-day, nor would I want to go by myself with a chems, as a chems provider, but sometimes we have to. So just be aware of those situations. Number five, dress professionally. Obviously, dress for the situation. Our chems providers had a little bit different outfit than our EMS providers. We had more of a khaki type look, shoes, and a polo. Just made it a little bit easier for us to move. Made it a little bit more comfortable because we're going to be there for a few hours. Set expectations. This is where you let the clients know what to expect during the appointment. Kind of let them know the length of the appointment. Tell them that you're unable to extend that out further because you have other appointments. And just explain the goals and what your point is. This will, one, keep you on time. But number two, some of these patients that we discussed before are lonely. They just want somebody there, and you'll get wrapped up there for hours if you just can't step out. But if you show up and you say, hey, Betty, I've got an appointment in about 2 hours. Our appointment will take about an hour and a half. It puts them thinking that, hey, they do have to leave. So when you're ready to leave, you can get out of that situation. Establish perimeters. Once again, make it clear you have a schedule. Tell them you can't go beyond the time, and let them know that if you're on shift that you may have to leave for an emergent call. And that's just something that probably a lot of your rural areas are going to be dual providers, right? You're going to be a 911 provider that's out doing chems appointments. Just let them know in the beginning that, hey, I'm carrying my radio. If a true emergency comes out, I'm going to have to leave you. It's not that I won't come back and see you. It's just that we may have to cut our appointment short. Be aware of what's around you. Be mindful of how many people are in the residence. I don't know how many times I've been on calls and people just pop out of nowhere and you're like, where the hell did that person come from? Look out for any signs of dangers from bystanders. Look at the home, make sure you don't see a lot of drug use or things that you might be concerned about. Obviously, once again, people tend to come out of nowhere. All right, did I scare anybody? No? Everybody hear the dog?
Yeah, we heard him.
All right, make sure you call Ed about pets. You guys know that pets are very protective of their owners. Definitely, Melissa's laughing. That's great. Make sure when you arrive on scene, make sure you ask if there's any animals in the house and if they can just tie them up somewhere. Be aware of intoxication. If somebody is impaired by drugs or alcohol, obviously there's going to be a higher risk of issues. If you do have somebody that's impaired, reschedule the appointment. And if safety is an issue, remove yourself immediately. Kim, no comment on this one?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking I like the middle drink.
Yeah, to be in Vegas again at 8 in the morning with 3 margaritas in your mouth, it's been a while. All right, or frozen daiquiris. I don't think I could do that anymore. That was probably, 25 years old. All right. Keep a clear path to your door. Know your exits. Make sure they're not blocked. Some obvious stuff. Guard your privacy. A little bit harder in smaller towns because everybody knows everybody. But definitely, just give them your first name or just your last name. Restrict as much information as needed. You don't want a stalker around your house. If you're in your private vehicle, kind of park outside the view of the residence. If you guys ever seen officers respond to like domestic violence type situations, I always park like 2 houses down, right? And then walk up to the residence. Kind of want to do the same thing for you guys just to be safe if it's something that you may be concerned about. Some of the rural areas, you guys are probably know everybody anyways that you're dealing with. So you probably know who you can kind of be careful about that and who you probably shouldn't be. Social media privacy. Make sure that you monitor your privacy settings on social media. It's very easy to obtain information on people, and make sure you don't post any HIPAA violations on social media. So don't be saying, hey, I'm going to this house today to do a chems appointment, right? That's probably not something that's appropriate. When it comes to very easy to obtain information on people, I just want to throw out how easy it is to figure stuff out. So we went out on a car wreck for a patient that was semi-responsive, said his girlfriend was in the vehicle. Couldn't find his girlfriend. So what do? I get on Facebook. I look his name up first. I find out who he associates with the most, which is his girlfriend. We were unable to really determine who she was because we tried Googling the name, but I noticed that she's friends with my son. So I call my son at 2 in the morning and I said, hey, do you know this girl and know how to get a hold of her? And he said, yeah, let me Snapchat her and I'll find out if she's okay. So quickly, that easily, I was able to pull, kind of who the boyfriend was and how to get a hold of who the girlfriend was and how to get a hold of her within probably about 10 minutes on a call. And we were able to find out that she was safe, obviously, at home. But just how easy it is to obtain information on people. You can Google anybody and find out their home address, their phone numbers. So just be aware of that. That's all out there. That's why we try to keep everything kind of safe and locked down. The number 15, your sixth sense. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. Don't go in, remove yourself from the area, cancel or reschedule your appointment. If you feel like things aren't right and you'd rather have a second provider with you, get a second provider with you. There's no reason for you guys to put yourselves in jeopardy or in danger just to do this, okay? Unlike the 911 side where we're a little bit more forced to go into things that sometimes aren't the most comfortable, in this scenario, we have complete control. And so if you don't feel right, don't worry about it. Don't do it. All right, we're getting close to the end, guys. You can be done with me. Some things to think about when you minimize infection or risks or a risk of infection. These are just some simple tips to think about, especially if you're in your own private vehicles or in a vehicle that you use quite frequently for chems. Place a surface between your bag and the home of the floor. Sometimes you can use like a sheet. You can use a plastic bag that you kind of put down. Try to leave all your garbage in the home. Don't take your garbage back out with you unless it's something that you don't feel comfortable leaving there. Don't forget to have BSI and use proper hand washing in between your chems appointments. So if that means hand sanitizer, then that's what you use. Clean your equipment between each visits and then double bag any items that you need to remove from the home. Try to keep them out of your seating area. So maybe just put them in the trunk or somewhere where you can clean it later. But definitely don't want to take home anything to your family, you know, that you got from somebody else's house, especially in the world of COVID right now. You know, that's a big stress, is trying not to spread the COVID to everybody. So with that, we have finished module 9. Just to give you guys an idea of what we do next week, in case you're wondering, we're at module 10. Let me see here. Going to get more in the medical side of things. I think I've been saying that the last couple times, but this time I'm for real. We're going to go over COPD and asthma next week, and we are going to go over, am I missing number 10 here?
CHF, it says.
Oh, thank you. I don't know why I can't see that. I must, oh, there it is, CHF. So we're going to dig deep down into each one of those medical conditions. We are going to reiterate some of those meds that we talked about and kind of go into more of how they affect each pathological response. That didn't make any sense. Each chronic disease, sorry. And then we'll go forward from there. Before we leave tonight, though, I wanted to kind of ask you guys what you'd like to see as additional modules. So I know we talked about ImageTrend because that's something you guys all use. So that'll be one we go over. The other additional modules we have is labs. Does everybody want to go over labs?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So we'll definitely do that. And then we do have one that we built on leadership. I definitely enjoy leadership. I feel like everybody's a leader. That's something that you guys have an option to. And then if you guys, I'm going to give you this week to try to decide if there's anything else that you want me to focus on. So if you come up with a topic, so just to tell you where we're kind of going here, we're going to hit COPD and asthma, we're going to hit CHF, we're going to go into diabetes, and then we're going to go into behavioral health for sure. Your optional modules are kind of what you guys want. So I identify the ImageTrend. I think that's going to be important to all of you guys. And even if you don't use ImageTrend, I still think you could take a lot away from what they do, so that you can kind of think of some ideas to track stuff. Labs is definitely an optional module. And then I have leadership already built. And then, yeah, whatever you guys think that you want. So if there's a particular topic you want me to cover, I will build something for you. If you get bored and you really just want to see this awesome request for proposal that I created for a mock ambulance service, we can do that too. I don't care. I've got a lot of good stuff here. So, or revenue cycle, not necessarily to do with chems, but I do have some good stuff on revenue cycle and how everything you do within the EMS world affects your revenue. So there's that too, if you guys want. So just let me know. I'll give you some time to think about it this week, but just let me know if there's any other topics you want. All right. With that, you guys are more than welcome to log off. Thank you so much. And I know I do most of the talking, but I do appreciate you guys being here. You guys have good input, and we'll see you next week. And if you guys want, I'll be sticking around just for a little bit for any questions you might have.